Every year, violent collisions kill 40,000 Americans and injure another 3 million. But there is no such thing as an accident. Every collision has a story as unique as the people involved. Rusty Haight's a leading authority on accident reconstruction. He trains investigators around the world to read the clues and solve the mysteries.
No two crashes are alike. Of the primary categories, frontal, rear end, rollover, and side impacts. These side impacts are the worst. They can lead to severe internal injuries and even fatalities for the person in that seat.
I'm going as fast as I can.
It's been another long evening at Grandma and Grandpa's for little Amy Rogers. After all, when you're only 2 years old, time can pass slowly, especially when Mommy and Daddy aren't happy. And they aren't happy. An argument over an upcoming move has left her parents at odds again. The young family leaves for home, tense, upset, and in a hurry.
Well, he's gonna have to wait like the rest of us, because...
At about the same time as the Rogers begin their drive home, two men several blocks away get in an SUV and head for home too. Far from having a stressful evening, though, they've been partying at a nearby bar.
That was fun, huh? That was a lot of fun.
In about 15 seconds, lives will be shattered. And it all could have been avoided if some basic safety rules had not been recklessly ignored.
Honey, sit down, okay?
No,
Let me fix the baby real quick.
yeah, take care of it. You've had a lot to drink.
At approximately 11 p.m. on a hot Arizona night, accident investigator John Heineman is called out to the crash scene.
How many victims again? 3 victims. The information I received from our desk sergeant, who got a hold of me that night, was that we had 2 vehicles involved, an SUV and a sedan. There was 3 victims.
It's a very bad one. The SUV is in the middle of the road. The car is on the curb, and a traffic light pole has been knocked down. Heineman believes one of these vehicles must have tried to run a red light. It's his job now to figure out exactly what happened and who, if anyone, was at fault.
When I got the call that there was 3 victims, immediately knew this was going to be a bad crash. Hey, Doug, Tom, hey, we got one.
Knowing that, Heineman asks his partner, Doug Kramer, to help him. The crash scene is a real calamity, even to a couple of policemen who've seen plenty of crashes. It's not the wreckage, as bad as that is. What strikes Heineman and Kramer is that there are bodies everywhere they look. Little Amy's parents are pronounced dead at the scene.
Yeah, again, no seatbelt here.
Both have suffered major head trauma and internal bleeding. In the SUV, passenger Peter O'Sullivan is also dead after smashing his head into the windshield and suffering 2 massive skull fractures. It appears the only survivor is the driver of the SUV, John Lowry. Looking at what is left of the SUV, Heineman is surprised to learn that Lowry suffered only minor injuries, not much more than a cut on his face. Apart from the physical evidence, Lowry is the only one who can talk about what happened. Everybody else is dead.
At the scene, we didn't have there was no independent witnesses to this collision, and we needed to know who ran the red light. That was a key for us. And went to the hospital, try and get some information out of the driver.
Before being transported to the hospital, Lowry tells investigators that it was the other car that ran the red light and hit him.
A crash at a traffic signal-controlled intersection suggests one of 2 things. First, it could be that the lights malfunctioned. That's usually unlikely. What's more likely is somebody ran the red light. The question is which car? For accident investigator John Heineman, he's going to have to apply his training and experience to sort out who actually ran that red light. At this point, one thing's for certain. He knows he has a side impact, and for occupants in a passenger car, that's the worst kind of crash to be in. On the front of a vehicle, we have all this distance, all this space we can crush. You've heard of crumple zones. Well, that's what's built into the front of a vehicle. You can't really make the side of a vehicle any wider. We're limited. And the best you can do, perhaps, is some side impact airbags. There's not much room here. If you're on the side and you're hit on the side, you're the first one at the point of impact.
So in a situation like this, where you have a passenger that's thrown all the way over to the driver's side, you can expect to see massive injuries to the head with the brain being jostled around, to the vertebral column, and to the internal organs, where they can be torn from their attachments. You can have severe internal bleeding.
As Heinemann and his team prepare to start gathering the physical evidence, they're informed of a disturbing new development.
They're at the scene. Fire captain approached us, told us they saw the back window had been broken, and there may be a fourth victim.
Through the broken windows of the couple's car, firefighters notice a child seat and some toys. Heinemann asks firefighters to search the surrounding area, hoping against hope that it wasn't the tiny body of a child that broke the back window. And then a scene that seemingly couldn't get any worse does. In the bushes, about 100 feet from the crash scene, firefighters find the lifeless body of 2-year-old Amy Rogers.
As a parent, having young kids, they're the worst, the absolute worst. When you find out that a young child, young life is gone, it really affects you. And you still got to put your emotions aside and do your investigation. But again, the kids are the worst. And the first things we noticed is that nobody was seat belted in, and not even the infant. The infant was just rested in the car seat. The impact allowed the freedom to go out of the car.
So it's like this. A driver who would wear a seatbelt is 3 times more likely to restrain a child in the car with him. So you probably wonder what I'm doing here. Well, let's try a little experiment. Suppose you're driving down the road at 25. You're in a parking lot, and you have an unrestrained child in the seat next to you. That's not a good idea. The kid's out of a car seat, out of a seatbelt. Well, 25 miles an hour in a parking lot and a little bit of a crash is just about like doing the unthinkable. Throwing your baby from the 3rd floor. Doesn't make any sense, does it? Well, here's the deal. It's not the fall that's going to hurt. It's the sudden stop at the end. And this fall from this height was just the same as an unrestrained child moving forward and hitting the dash. Put the kids in a seatbelt or a car seat.
And not just the kids. None of the victims were wearing seatbelts. Only Lowry beat the odds. As Heinemann continues the on-scene investigation, he dispatches Officer Tom Reyes to follow up with the lone survivor at the hospital.
The light was green, so I don't know what happened. This guy must have hit me. He came out from nowhere.
First, he learns that Lowry's blood alcohol is over the legal limit.
We learned that his blood alcohol concentration was a .125.
You should obey traffic signals.
This was several hours after this impact occurred.
Whoops! Oh no! I almost missed that one.
He was impaired, probably didn't even see the red light. Obviously didn't see the car coming approaching him as well.
Lowry sticks by his story that the other car ran the red light, but he's got some incentive to say so. After all, the only other possible witnesses are dead, and he could face 4 counts of manslaughter if Heinemann can prove it was Lowry's fault. But Heinemann doesn't have that proof yet.
So at this point, John doesn't have any independent eyewitnesses to tell him who actually ran the red light. He's got the only surviving driver that's pointing at the dead guy. There's a surprise, huh? Who's saying, hey, the dead guy ran the red light. What John's going to have to do to get any kind of criminal charges into court is find some objective, independent way with the physical evidence to demonstrate who actually did run the red light in this case. That's the trick for investigators. They need to figure out, using that investigative technique and the physical evidence, how this crash happened. Accident investigator John Heinemann is piecing together one of the worst cases he's ever handled. 4 people are dead, including a 2-year-old who wasn't properly buckled in a car seat. In fact, no one was wearing a seatbelt. There is only one survivor in this crash. Belts aside, alcohol's a factor. Lowry was driving impaired. Still in all, John has to figure out which of the 2 drivers tried to beat the red light. In fact, may not have noticed the red light.
I think she's over there.
The fact that Lowry was driving under the influence makes him more likely to have run the red light. But Heinemann will need proof. And right now, this mystery is offering up few clues.
John's next step is to start collecting and analyzing the physical evidence. Here, there are some car parts in the road, but there are no real tire marks. And tire marks are what the accident investigator is going to use to really piece this together. For him, that lack of tire marks is going to be a real challenge.
With no skid marks, at least one thing is clear. Neither driver was on the brakes when the collision happened. That would explain the violence of the crash.
Obviously, something that came through our mind was that neither one of these drivers saw each other. They didn't react. One of the drivers didn't even react to the red light.
But then Heineman learned something that could turn his theory about the SUV on its head. Results from the medical examiner come in. It turns out Kevin Rogers was also impaired, not by alcohol, but by methamphetamine.
Did you take something?
I took something. I'm with the guys. What do you expect me to do?
We knew we had one impaired driver, and we kind of had a hunch that he may be the one that ran the red signal. Now we had two impaired drivers, one with the alcohol and the other with the drugs.
So it's back to square one. If both drivers were impaired, either one could have ignored the traffic signals. But Heineman knows only one of them really did. Trouble is, how to prove it.
We're just kicking around the idea of how can we find out who ran the red light, and just kind of all of a sudden it hit us. Hey, let's get the bulbs and have those analyzed. And the key to this investigation was rested on the light bulb that I collected at the scene.
When the car knocked down the traffic light, the bulbs in that signal shattered. It occurred to Heineman that by analyzing the filaments in that broken bulb, they could determine which light was on and which was off at the time of the crash. That means investigators will be able to tell who had the green and who had the red when both cars entered the intersection.
What you look at from a forensic examination is that you're looking at the coil structure and you're looking at the shape of the overall filament. In the case of the red, what we have is a fractured filament. These are a cold break, which means it was off at the time it fractured, and you have a series of small coils that have just broken off. If you go to the green, what you see is the same support, but look at your coil structure. You have stretching, you have a breakdown in the general shape. It's no longer in the nice curved C shape. This means that it was soft at the time of the accident, which means that it was on. So because of this type of deformation, we are able to say that the green lamp was on at the time that the vehicle struck the pole.
The hard filament in the cold red light shattered, but soft filaments in the hot green light only bent. Since the downed pole was facing Alex Rogers' car, it's immediately obvious to investigators that he had the green light when he entered the intersection.
What happened was we had the sedan approaching on a red light. The speed wasn't very great. The signal turned green for the sedan. Went not very fast, 25, 30 miles through the intersection, and was T-boned by the SUV at a high rate of speed, which we felt ran the red light.
With the results of the test on the traffic lights, John Heineman can now replay the sequence of events that led to the fatal collision. Amy Rogers and her parents were on their way back home. They were about to cross an intersection, the same intersection John Lowry and his friend were approaching. The family had the green light. The SUV had the red, but never stopped. Nobody was on the brakes when the vehicles collided. Both drivers were impaired, Lowry because of alcohol, Amy's father by drugs, and no one was wearing a seatbelt. The tragic results of all these factors led to 4 people dead and only 1 survivor.
John Lowry's the only survivor in this crash. Like is so often the case, a drunk driver responsible for a collision walks away from it, but he won't get away for long.
Because the other driver was also impaired, Lowry was not charged with the maximum sentence. He finally pled guilty and received a sentence of 8 years in prison.
In the real world, as in dreams, nothing is quite as it seems. Look, I didn't write that, Dean Koontz did, but I've certainly experienced that as an accident investigator. This job is anything but routine. Every once in a while, you run across a case that makes you say, and I thought I'd seen everything. Well, this case is a perfect example.
On an early April evening in New Jersey, a 911 call comes in.
Yes, there's a body lying in the middle of the road at Robertson Way. Looks like he got hit by a car.
Accident investigator Andy Rich works for the local prosecutor's office. He gets to the scene not long after the 911 call has been made. There, the lifeless body of young Matthew Nyland is lying on the side of the road. A quick check reveals that Matthew has just moved into the neighborhood to take a new job. He was due to start work the very next day. The human body is usually one of the most reliable and generous sources of evidence for any crash investigator. But in this case, the body actually deepens the mystery because it doesn't show any of the usual signs of a hit and run.
You've got a pedestrian, you've got some debris in the roadway. Anything else you're going to work on?
Well, right now all I have is ankle injury and some blood coming from the ankle. I don't have any typical injuries I would normally see on a pedestrian hit.
Things like bumper contact to the leg, that sort of thing?
Yeah, lower extremity fractures, head injuries, glass in the hair. I don't have any of that.
At first glance, Andy has no idea what led to this young man's untimely death. One thing he does know is that the clock is ticking.
When you're dealing with a hit and run, time is a big factor. It's very easy to get rid of a car. You can fix it, wash evidence off.
The scene is particularly small and quiet. No witnesses, no bystanders, and little physical evidence. But over by the body, Andy comes across his first clue.
There was one skid mark, and it was very close to the body, and it appeared to be fresh. And we could tell a fresh skid mark from one that may be old. You look at the dirt dispersed around the tire mark. Is it covering the tire mark, or is there obviously a cleaning to the roadway where the dirt's been disturbed? There's also, you could tell if it's a faded skid mark from one that has a lot of fresh rubber laid down.
This single skid mark tends to support the hit and run scenario. The driver could have stomped on the brakes to try to avoid hitting the young man. A little further down the street, there's another possible clue. Tire prints made in the ground just off the side of the road.
The tire prints were on the tree belt, and the tree belt is a grassy area that's between the sidewalk and the street. That kind of leads to the scenario that maybe the car goes out of control and then winds up driving off the roadway onto the tree belt.
Andy, how's this car involved?
Well, we ran the plates on all the cars that were parked on this road, and we found out that this one belongs to the victim.
So far, it seems as if Matthew Nyland was leaving his apartment and crossing the street when 50 feet or so down the road, another car went up onto the tree belt. The driver lost control and tried to stop before hitting him, but he couldn't. Instead of sticking around, he fled the scene, leaving Matthew to die. Up to now, there's no indication that this is anything other than a hit and run. But after a closer inspection of the scene, a puzzling find next to the victim's body threatens to deepen the mystery even further.
We did find a hat that was next to the body, and that's also something else that was very odd. It was a 25-mile-per-hour speed zone, and I would expect to find a body approximately 40 feet from the hat, not the hat, 3 feet from the body. It just shouldn't happen.
Now, the reason that the hat, or for example, a pair of glasses, may not end up near a body that's been hit by a car has to do with crash dynamics. I know a thing or two about crash dynamics, but so does Jerry Eubanks. He's an expert in pedestrian crash analysis. Okay, so Jerry, we got the pedestrian set. You're gonna be watching for the hat and the glasses. What else?
Hat and the glasses and shoes. We got 2 shoes that are untied this time, so they should go far down line, maybe 40, 50, 60 feet. Hat and the glasses should stay in this area of impact, although if the glasses are hit by the windshield, they'll start traveling down line.
So glasses, hat, good indication of the area of impact.
Area of impact, not a point of impact.
All right, let's make this happen. Okay. So we have the ped crash, and we find that the evidence we expected to see near the point of impact is here. For example, the hat, we're only talking about it being about 6 feet from the actual marked point of impact, and about 9 or 10 feet away, we find the glasses and one of the shoes. So everything is exactly where we'd expect to find it.
Back in New Jersey, Andy Rich has Matthew Nyland's body and the hat Nyland was wearing almost right next to each other, not widely separated as the crash dynamics would suggest. Yet a 911 caller claimed Nyland was the victim of a hit and run. For Rich, the evidence is just not adding up.
The body of 23-year-old Matthew Nyland's lying on the side of the road in suburban New Jersey. We've all seen this before. 1 minute, a healthy young kid. The next minute, a grieving family trying to pick up the pieces. Andy Rich is the first stop on that long road. He's here to find out exactly what caused Matthew's death, both for the parents and the authorities. But this case is getting stranger by the moment.
Anytime two objects come in contact with each other, there's going to be a transfer of evidence. We walk the grid, and we walk up and down the roadway, and then we walk up and down the roadway crossways. And we change directions. And there were no parts. There were no automotive parts. There were no paint chips.
In fact, the car should not be the only source of evidence in this case. Matthew Nyland's body should also show signs of the collision. Here's why. So, Jerry, accident investigators working pedestrian crashes are going to find evidence from the body on the road, right?
Yes.
What kind of evidence do they look for?
Well, as in this case, we've got clothing fabric. You can find hair, blood, and flesh. Shoe prints also.
Do you have to be dragged by the car for this to show up?
No, in this case, we had the dummy thrown, and when he hits the ground, we get these larger marks, and the smaller mark is a secondary bounce.
So just sliding will get that transfer?
Yes.
After the body gets hit by the car and it's sliding around along the ground, this guy's wearing jeans. Normally, I would expect to find some gene transfer, blue material, that gets rubbed off the jeans onto the pavement.
Back in New Jersey, Andy Rich can't find any signs of transfer at the crash site. But then, just as they're wrapping up their on-scene investigation, Andy gets his first lucky break. Broken glass has been found on a nearby street, glass that may have come from the fleeing car.
What could have happened here is maybe some headlight glass could have broken, got caught on the bumper. The driver takes a very hard turn, and now that glass, because of the force from the turning, gets thrown off that car a block away.
But on closer inspection, Andy's first promising lead quickly evaporates.
It looked like window glass from the side or the rear windshield of a car, not the front. When a front windshield breaks, it stays together because it's laminated. Whereas when the side windows break, they turn into little popcorn-sized kernels, and you just see these little fragments all over the ground. That's what we had here. You know, why a pedestrian would hit and break a side window or a rear window. And I'm looking at it, it doesn't look right, and we interviewed the neighbors, and the neighbors tell us, no, that was there for about a couple of weeks, and the local police actually took a report on it.
Andy and his team leave the accident scene no closer to unlocking the mystery of Matthew Nyland's death. But he can't stop thinking about the case. It's got his mind going. The absence of physical evidence, the hat next to Matthew's body, the strange ankle injury. Something's just not right. And then, later that night, it comes to him.
As normal, I think about what happened at the scene. You know, did I miss anything? And I started thinking, if I jumped from the roof of the apartment building, where would I land? And I just started thinking about that.
It's now the next morning. Rich has been working on the case for more than 12 hours. In the early daylight, he goes back to the scene to take a few measurements at the nearby apartment building. If someone were to jump off the roof or get pushed, they'd land just about where Nyland's body was found. The case has taken a brand new turn. Nyland may have been killed or committed suicide, but Rich isn't concluding anything just yet.
Just because that body was found where I theoretically would think it should have ended up after jumping from that building doesn't mean that that's what happens.
But still, Andy now has a solid working theory that can be validated by further examination of the body. Injuries from a fall are very different from those caused by a car hitting somebody on the street.
It was important to see what the medical examiner had to say. Hello.
Hey, Andy, how are you?
Okay, what happened?
Well, I want to talk to you about this pattern of fractures on the legs. He's got an oblique fracture in the right thigh, a fracture of the left lower leg, and the interesting pattern of fractures is symmetrical fractures at the ankles. And looking at the x-rays, the way the fractures are situated, to me, it's much more consistent with falling from a height and not from a direct motor vehicle impact.
Okay, thank you.
The medical examiner confirms that Matthew's 2 broken ankles are not at all consistent with a hit and run. But those injuries would correspond with a fall from a height.
Judd, as an expert in collision trauma biomechanics, you see certain types of injuries, and are pedestrian injuries, are they consistent with just that type of event, or are they common to other events?
Pedestrians have a very unique injury pattern. You see very telltale evidence of contact and specific injury patterns to the lower extremity, as well as damage as you proceed, typically up one side of the body, also to the head area. So there is a very distinct pattern.
Things are finally coming together for Andy Rich, but there are more checks to be made. He gets a warrant to search the roof of Matthew Nyland's apartment building. He wants to verify a couple of things he found on one of Nyland's running shoes.
What was found on the bottom of the sneaker, wedged into the treads of the sneaker, was a pebble. And also on the top of the shoe was like a black smear, some type of black transfer. And we noticed on the roof there was tar. There was an impression in the tar that matched the sole of the sneaker. When we went into his apartment, we found medications that's used to treat patients for depression.
Everything is now clear to the investigators. This is not a hit and run, just a very sad story. A desperate young man climbs to the top of his apartment building and jumps. His body lands on the side of the road, making it look like he was hit by a car.
Investigators do just that, they investigate. And in this case, Andy got to the scene of what appeared to be a hit-and-run crash, and he applied his investigative techniques and he solved the case. A good investigator will do that. He relied on his training and experience. He figured out that this wasn't actually a hit-and-run, the hit-and-run it appeared to be. But who made the tire marks? Who made the phone call? We may never know. Ultimately, though, the family's going to have to figure out why the young man ended his life the way he did.
Next, investigators are baffled when a motorcyclist's fatal injuries seem to have come from something other than a motorcycle crash.
We attend the autopsies just to ensure that foul play is not involved. And in doing that, we can rule out a homicide, because unfortunately it's very common for people to use motor vehicle crashes as a cover-up for a homicide.
35-year-old Mike Cooper is coming face to face with some hard realities. His job has become stressful and uninteresting, and his marriage of 12 years is coming to an end.
I'm gonna go get the kids now.
One of the few things he still enjoys is his bike. After a long ride lasting well into the evening, Cooper is returning home when suddenly disaster strikes. On a seemingly harmless corner that he has ridden past hundreds of times, his bike goes down. Trapped under the weight of it, he slides into oncoming traffic and is hit by an approaching SUV. Pronounced dead at the scene, Mike Cooper's body is taken to a nearby hospital. The driver of the SUV, Marcus Schrader, is visibly shaken and waits for a team of collision reconstructionists led by Constable Jeff Vance to arrive. A motorcycle rider himself, Vance will need to answer a series of key questions. What would cause a bike to slide out of control on a quiet residential street? And was someone or something responsible for this wreck?
I approach every investigation like there's endless possibilities that are the root cause of the crash. Once you make an assumption where it's a high speed involved, well, then you have to look at the root causes behind that. What else is going on? Is the accelerator stuck? Is there a mechanical defect? Is it an attempt on the person's life? All of these possibilities have to be looked at and ruled out.
Jeff Vance quickly takes in the scene. The SUV's front end is on top of the curb, with the bike wedged tightly underneath it. Both vehicles lie barely 10 feet past the point of impact. Right away, it's obvious to investigators that Mike Cooper's motorcycle offered him little protection in the crash.
There was just some minor undercarriage damage to the sport utility vehicle, and that only made sense. And the motorcycle itself, there were some significant forces that actually acted upon that, which caused the entire frame to twist, as well as the engine itself to break. The motorcycle and the driver, within milliseconds, changed direction. And you can only imagine the force on the human body associated with that. But also, too, if you can imagine the sport utility vehicle, because it is higher, if someone is sliding along, they go underneath it, there's not only a force pushing them in the opposite direction, but as well as there's also a downward force on the occupant and the motorcycle. And this, in turn, projected the driver approximately 45 feet from the area of impact.
Constable Jeff Vance has a pretty horrific crash scene on his hands. Got a motorcycle crashed head-on into an SUV. Doesn't need a physics degree to figure out who's going to win that battle. Now, what he's got left over is the SUV driver who's telling one version of the story. That's the human element. But he still has the vehicles and the environment to deal with. They'll tell the rest of the story.
In the majority of investigations, it is the human element that poses the most difficulty for investigators. Survivors involved in fatal collisions can be severely traumatized by their experience. Their recollection of events is often clouded by guilt and remorse.
There's a wide range, actually, of the way that people react to traumatic situations such as this. Everything from a denial, such as there's nothing wrong, I haven't done anything wrong, right through to an absolute collapse, where people can't handle the stress and collapse, and also do require immediate medical attention.
Next thing I know, he slides towards me. I try to avoid him. I don't think he was speeding.
It is very common for these people that have, say, for example, seriously injured or killed someone.
Person in the car at the time?
There is a significant number of them that actually become alcoholics or drug addicts as a result of these crashes, because they don't obtain the assistance they require, even if they're not considered at fault in the crash.
In this case, Marcus Schrader appears to be in the middle of the two extremes. After repeated attempts to get a statement, he is finally composed enough to offer police his version of events. To get at the truth of exactly what happened here, investigators will compare Schrader's story with the physical evidence at the scene.
Everyone has a different perception of the truth, and it is unfortunate, but it is in human nature that people omit things or add things to their beliefs that would assist them in any way possible.
So, Jeff, you've had a chance to talk to the driver. What's he told you?
He was driving along, minding his own business in the fast lane, and saw the motorcyclist lose control, slide into his lane. He tried to maneuver around the motorcycle and swerve into the curb lane. Unfortunately, they hit.
So he fixated on the target. That's not uncommon for a non-professional driver. Professional drivers are often taught to steer toward the dust and debris because the crash has already been there and left. For the rest of us, unfortunately, we tend to follow the action too often, and it's unfortunate for this guy.
If Marcus Schrader had swerved to his left instead of his right, chances are this fatal impact would have been avoided. By steering to his right, Schrader inadvertently put his SUV on a collision course with the motorcycle. However, investigators find no evidence his SUV was skidding before impact, suggesting his speed was low and that he had little time to react. Working back from the SUV, they are able to follow debris and scrapes left by Cooper's motorcycle to a tire mark on the opposite side of the road. The absence of skid marks and the trail of motorcycle debris leading up to the point of impact clearly indicate that the SUV did not collide with the bike before it went down. Schrader's version of events appears to be the truth. It appears that Mike Cooper's bike simply fell and slid across the road into the path of Schrader's SUV. The big question is why?
So when you take a look at this crash scene, we're still trying to figure out what would cause this guy to lay the bike down and end up underneath the SUV. Well, one of the issues is speed, or potentially is speed. So Jeff's looking into the coefficient of friction, the stickiness of the roadway and tire combination, together with a little bit of math to try to figure out how fast this guy actually was going when he laid the bike down across the center line of the road.
From the evidence littering the road, Jeff Vance determines that Mike Cooper was traveling at just 30 miles per hour when he lost control of his motorcycle. Slightly over the speed limit, but well under the capabilities of both the motorcycle and its experienced rider.
It was very important to determine how fast the motorcycle was driving and maneuvering the corner. He wasn't traveling at a high rate of speed, so it posed a question to me then, what would cause it? If someone is going too fast for the corner and loses control, then it's completely understandable. But if someone's taking a corner around the speed limit, it just doesn't make sense for a motorcycle to lose control and for the driver to die as a result of it.
After hours at the scene, police are still no closer to explaining how or why Mike Cooper lost his life. Coming up, Jeff Vance makes a discovery with tragic implications.
We attend the autopsies just to ensure that foul play is not involved. It's very common for people to use motor vehicle crashes as a cover-up for a homicide.
A motorcyclist is dead after a crash with an SUV. Jeff Vance, the lead investigator in the case, has quite a puzzle on his hands. When a motorcycle's in a turn, there's sideways forces and up and down forces acting on the bike. You adjust those forces by your lean angle, adjusting your speed, and braking. Jeff's wondering, did the rider in this case actually do something that upset that balance? He's hoping the body will give him some clues.
We attend the autopsies just to ensure that foul play is not involved, and we do that through ensuring that the injury profile on the individual is consistent with the damage to the vehicles and the accident scene. And in doing that, we can rule out a homicide, because unfortunately it's very common for people to use motor vehicle crashes as a cover-up for a homicide.
The medical exam reveals that the victim's leg was badly scraped and his foot crushed. His skin was literally torn inside out during the slide-out and the impact with the SUV. The injury is horrific, but not fatal. A toxicology report shows alcohol in the bloodstream at the time of his death. But the levels are so low, Jeff Vance quickly discounts any theory that Mike Cooper was driving while impaired. As the autopsy draws to a close, the medical examiner calls Jeff's attention to the victim's head X-rays. They clearly reveal the cause of death, but they also send the entire investigation back to the starting line. A hole in the skull, just above the left eye, produced massive trauma and significant blood loss. A helmet was recovered at the crash scene, but this injury suggests a helmet was not being worn at the time of the collision. When could the injury have occurred? Did Mike Cooper hit something that caused him to lose control of his motorcycle? Or did something or someone hit him? Jeff Vance will need to carefully re-examine the bike to find the answers.
When a motorcycle hits a car, you don't expect them to die of a puncture wound to the head, especially if they're wearing a helmet. More typically, you'd expect them to have had injuries to their neck or to their internal organs. Their aorta can even be just torn off and they can bleed internally and die within minutes.
Back at the police garage, Jeff Vance now knows what killed Mike Cooper, a puncture wound to the head. Revealing how the wound was caused will determine if the crash was an elaborate hoax to cover another crime or a catastrophic failure of a vital piece of safety equipment. Examining his personal effects, Jeff Vance quickly determines that Mike Cooper sealed his own fate the moment he put on his most important piece of protective gear, his helmet.
Examination of the helmet itself, the label that was on the inside stating that this was a novelty helmet not meant for safety purposes. There's no padding on the inside at all, which has no energy absorption material at all. And this would also explain some of the trauma to this driver's head as well. If you can imagine the motorcycle sliding on its side, moving across 3 lanes of traffic, and being struck by a northbound sport utility vehicle. So basically, his head went up and struck the turn signal on the handlebar of the motorcycle, because that also hit the sport utility vehicle's bumper. And we know this through the examination with tissue being found on the turn signal, as well as the damage to his skull.
So Jeff's had a chance to look at the bike, and he's got the rider dynamics figured out. As the rider went into the slide, he fell to the pavement, and the cheesy helmet struck the roadway, moving off his head and offering him less protection, so that when the bike hits the SUV, the rider goes forward, his unprotected head now hits the turn indicator. What Jeff's got to do next is to figure out what caused that bike to lean and then slide out.
While examining the bike, trying to determine what caused Mike Cooper's fatal slide, investigator Jeff Vance is repeatedly drawn to the tires of his motorcycle. Shiny and slippery to the touch, it appears as if the sides had been polished with a product designed to keep car tires from fading or cracking. Could the polish have affected the motorcycle's handling on the night of the crash?
Being a motorcycle rider myself, I know that the tires aren't that shiny. I went over and felt them, and there was a very slippery substance on them. And it actually went around the whole tread, except for the travel portion, a very thin, narrow strip on the center of the tire itself. I was thinking to myself, that's not right. And I thought to myself, well, that will significantly reduce the speed that this motorcycle will be able to take the corner. And I was thinking to myself, could this be it? Because I've never come across something like this before.
So Jeff, do you have any working theories about why the bike went down?
Yes, I found some contamination on the tires. They're really slippery, and I think that lowered the coefficient of friction between the tire and the road enough for the motorcycle to slide out. Can you give me a hand doing a lean test on the bike, just to see where the contamination starts?
Sure, let's do that. What can I do for you?
If you just lean the bike over towards me, and I'll let you know when the contamination touches the road. Okay, you can just go up a little bit. Okay, that's perfect.
So what did you get?
I got 20 degrees, and that's well within the normal range of a novice driver.
A quick test in the garage shows that a 20-degree lean angle is all that is required to have the polished area of the tire meet the asphalt. On a test track, can a motorcycle going the posted speed limit through a similar corner exceed that 20-degree lean angle?
The shape of a bike tire is not like what you find on a car. This bike tire is more oval. When you're driving down the road just straight and level, the contact patch is right down here in the center. When you go through a turn, that contact patch spreads around the sides. We know there's a relationship in a turn between lean angle and speed and, of course, the roadway friction. In this case, what we want to do is figure out if a lean angle in this scenario will get us past 20 degrees. That'll be about here. A more aggressive turn will be further out on the sidewalk.
On a corner with the same curvature as the one at the crash scene, a rider maintaining 30 miles per hour easily exceeds a 20-degree lean angle while executing the turn.
Not a terribly taxing demonstration for our rider. He made it to 20 degrees without any difficulty. But if you change the friction at that point on the tire, you'd probably have this bike slide out. It's interesting. You got to wonder, why would someone put that much stuff on that kind of tire on purpose?
It seems inconceivable that Mike Cooper, an experienced rider, would put a slippery automotive polish on his own tires, where it could actually contact the road. Jeff Vance continues to examine the hours leading up to the crash for any evidence that someone could have deliberately tampered with his bike. Homicide detectives follow up on the suspicions, but they can find nothing to suggest that foul play was a factor in the crash. Instead, it appears that Mike Cooper's zeal to have good-looking tires and a vintage helmet clouded his judgment. Jeff Vance began his investigation with a commitment to finding the cause of this crash and to explain how a low-speed impact killed a fellow motorcycle rider. He now has his answers. After a long ride to clear his head, Mike Cooper is returning home on a road he has ridden hundreds of times before. As he rounds a curve, his lean angle exceeds 20 degrees, putting an area of his tires slick with polish into contact with the asphalt. In a split second, his bike is down and sliding into the path of an SUV driven by Marcus Schrader. On impact, his head collides with the handlebars before his body is thrown into the grass on the side of the road. Evidence from the scene, the medical exam, and the motorcycle itself paints a picture of a man who made a series of poor judgments. Using a rubber polish on his own tires and choosing to ride without a proper helmet ultimately sealed Mike Cooper's fate.
I've investigated over 1,200 collisions now, and I cannot think of one of them being an accident. They are avoidable. It's as simple as that. Driver error is a huge factor in all of these, let it be speed or alcohol or just inattentiveness. There is not, I have not come across a true accident myself.
There's no doubt about it that riding a bike requires a different skill set than driving a car, and greater concentration. One of the things that Jeff's investigation reminds us is that riders have to be responsible for their own safety and their safety equipment. This guy made a series of mistakes, but sometimes it's only one mistake that could end a life.